Hello, everyone. Say anything to anybody?
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Peace. Today we're talking with Darryl Robert Schoon. So this is his Amazon page. I'll put the link below. And this is his new book, Docking at the Mothership. And it says it's Darryl Robert Schoon's memoir is composed of thoughts written during a period of enlightenment and articles in which he predicts and explains today's economic crisis. All right, on to the video. Peace. When you're 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, you've been around the block a couple times. And
Yeah.
and hopefully you know how to ride through the storm a little bit. But today,
Yeah.
today, I I just don't have a lot of confidence in our citizens today. Like, and I don't want to get you upset or anybody else upset when I say this, but look at how easily people react these days without thinking things through. Like they just throw a Ukraine flag up on their Twitter account or their email, whatever they use it for, without really thinking through that that's a whole, we don't even know what the real story there is. Obviously, there's more to that puzzle. I think it's more to do with what we've been talking about and money and the banksters and power and control than it is about,
Okay. Let me address that.
yeah.
In Critical Path, Bucky wrote about and in fact, the story I just told you about the crisis that we're going through in the transformation. Bucky only referred to that period in his life with one sentence in Critical Path. And he said that if it took an event like that to change him, to transform his life, why would it be different for humanity? Okay. So, all right. Okay.
World War III, maybe.
Maybe, yes. The possible. Now let me talk about the thing about the shift and what Bucky talked about. Bucky said that he said everything that humanity does on the planet, individually or collectively, to make our lives better, or every effort we attempt to do something, he called that class two. That's class two actions. He said everything that the universe does is class one. It obviates anything, like there's an override.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something to that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not that we're not allowed to do class, because we all have. That's what our life is. We've all made decisions. We've turned left, we turned right, and we've sometimes made a decision to back up and go the other way, or something we just kept going. Doesn't matter. That's class two. But when class one moves, it takes over everything.
It trumps everything, doesn't it?
Trumps everything. And Bucky said, this crisis is class one. Now, it knows of the need for the transformation. All right. We don't. We're so locked up in our own little things. And David, you're absolutely right that at a certain age, when you're older, you do get something by being in that car long enough, having so many car wrecks, and God, you're still there. Remember the time the car flipped over and blew up, and we well, your attitude is different than it's when it's your first car wreck. All right. I mean, and it's true. It is true. I know that when I got busted the second time, going in was a whole lot different than the first time. The first time when I went to county jail, I was 22 years old.
Scared as hell, probably.
Jesus, motherfucker, like boom. All right. Wow. And my thoughts went, wow, this is like this movies. You hear that, the sound of those doors clang. I remember walking with my bedroll and hearing those guys all, who's the low rider is going to ride tonight. All right. That's something. And so years later, when the big one happened, hey, I was pretty, I mean, when the big one happened, I was glad that the first time it happened. So I didn't feel so, oh, all right. Now, so you're right that when you've gone through and lived through a number of cycles in this plane, you're a bit different. And so it is. In my first book, Time of the Vulture, I wrote about faith. All right. In fact, there's a person, a friend of ours, Martha and I, close friend of ours now. We didn't know her then. She just bumped into our life again because she had bought C60, and we've got a company, and she's talking. There was a problem with her thing and customer service. She's talking to Martha. All right. So this person goes, Martha is Schoon. Your last name is Schoon? She goes, yes. She says, are you married to Darryl Schoon? And Martha goes, yeah, it's my husband. He's right here. She said, I've been reading his stuff for 10 years. And she said, I stopped reading it because I thought, how could he be so positive? How could he say a better world is coming? She'd given up. She'd gold, silver, whole thing. She had a company. She read all this stuff, knew it. Well, the thing is that when I believe that we're all where we are for a reason. This is not, it all appears so haphazard, so accidental, so vulnerable to chance, to accident, random, so random. Not only random, but bad luck, right? Bad luck. And I know now I'm 77, I've been through this stuff, that when I wrote, in fact, she brought up these words, the friend who's been following me for years. And she said, you wrote, gold, buy silver, have faith. And she said, and you said, Darryl, you better get some now while they're getting still good. All right. And I go, wow, she remembered that verbatim. And I wrote those words in 2007. And I've had this life that's so intense that I know about faith. And I'd rather not have had this life I've had because it's so intense to learn about faith. But when you've had things happen to me in such a way that even the relationship with my father makes sense in a greater context. Okay? When I have been something like me, and you get this bust in 1985, which was huge, and I had very little money. And when everything came down, one of the top criminal defense attorneys, in California, went to the court and asked to represent me on a court appointment for $60 an hour, when the person that they were after wanted her for his attorney. And I found out that somebody I knew had paid her millions. And she was worth it. And unbeknownst to me, I went to her, we've been friends. I met her, quote, by accident in 1967, that she had gone to the court and asked permission to be appointed my attorney at $60 an hour. I mean, you can go right now and Google and write down Penny Cooper, Penny, the documentary. All right. And it's about Penny Cooper, the lawyer. And she doesn't mention me, but there's a documentary about her up there. Okay. And she came to see me. There I am, huge bust had come down. She's taking all the data. She told me before there, I said, anything happens, tell them to call me. They got my number because they knew who Penny Cooper was. All right. And so when it did happen, I used to be paranoid about knowing Penny in my back of my mind, because I knew what I was doing for a living and I knew what she was doing for a living. I had met her, quote, by accident in 1967 when she was just out of law school. All right. She was like, I saw her and I said, God, you're like Nancy Drew on Reds. I'd never seen anybody take a courtroom like that. And she did it. She did it. And then years later, when push came to shove, she asked to be appointed my attorney for $60 an hour.
Wow.
And
Big
I know-
money, huge money back then, right?
Huge money back then. Yeah. Well, not 60. 60 is nothing compared to the million she would have made.
Yeah.
She's tops. And Penny said, you know, Darryl, she said, they offered me 20. That was the plea deal. The plea deal
Really?
was if I pled guilty, they give me 20. All right. That was a plea deal. First deal on the table. And Penny said, I can't recommend this. I can't recommend this. All right. And I said, Penny, that's sort of like in return for my promise to stand still, they're going to only shoot below my waist. All right. And a few months later, Penny said, Darryl, you want to go? You want to go? Let's go. So I'm ready. But she said, if you lose, they're going to hurt you. And so the final deal was 10 years. And I knew I only got that deal because of Penny, because they didn't want to deal with her because of how good she was. When you have those kind of things happen to you, it gives you a faith that you wouldn't have had otherwise. When you have friends and family.
Right, but you've been beaten up, Darryl. I mean, you've had some experiences that a lot of people would not survive.
That's true in a way, but
yeah, I mean, I've read your several of your books, and I mean, your outlook probably has helped you.
But I want to, it has helped me. But I want to say something, David. When push comes to shove, you find out you're a lot stronger than you thought you were.
Well,
but when you're in there and you're coming up for water and you're fighting for air, you find out that there's a fight in you that you didn't know you had. You find out you're a lot bigger than your fears tell you are.
No doubt about it. You have a choice whether you sink or swim. No doubt about it.
That's it.
But if you take the guy from 30 years ago or 40 years ago to the guy today, you must look at the U.S. government and the powers that be today. They're the same criminals that were in control back during the Vietnam War.
Totally.
So
when they talk about the deep
50
state,
years later,
when they talk about the deep state, I know it's not George Soros. I know it's not Nancy Pelosi. I know who it is.
Yeah, the window dressing.
Yeah. You know what you might want to do is when you go up to my website and you look for the books, on my book page, sitting next to Document of the Mothership is another book that I just put out in the second edition. And it's called that one. Yeah, it's called Letter to House Select Committee on Intelligence, the red, white, and blue one. All right. And this is the one that you might really be interested in reading too, because it's the deep state. And the reason how I got to know this is that Howard Hughes's banker, I met him in prison. Stunningly.
Wow.
All right. My first week. That's why I know life is not accidental.
I've read this, Darryl.
Oh, you read it?
Yes.
Oh, very few people have.
Yeah.
Very few people have. And this is the deep state. A lot of those players in the story that Norman told me that happened in the mid 1930s, 1980s, were also involved in 9/11, some of the major parties. And so I do know this, but I also know it wasn't by accident that I was there for Norman to tell that story to. He didn't tell that story to almost I'm probably the only person he told it to in his life. The reason he had those documents is he didn't burn them. He thought someday he might need them. And when push came to shove, he did. And he gave them to me. And they're the ones in the book that you read. So I do know a whole lot of stuff that other people don't know. And I know why they're afraid. And I know generally they've been misled and focused their fears on other things by the people who they really should fear. All right. The ones who are really behind the scenes. But I also know their time is pretty much up. My belief is that what this is going to do, it's going to shake it loose. It's going to shake things loose in a way that the way to get through this is not by hanging on. The way to get through this is by letting go and letting what happened happens. We're not in control anyway. But if you can keep your thoughts positive, if you can keep your thoughts on those who care for you and who you care for, and open yourself up to the belief that this is bigger than you and you are a part of it and it cares about you in a way that you don't understand or comprehend, you will get through it. Because that's what it's supposed to do. It's not there to muck with us. It just knows that this is a necessary thing that has got to happen.
Do you think people should be paying attention to what's going on with Russia and China? They're talk about replacing the dollar.
No.
Huh.
I no longer believe that people should be doing anything different than they are. I'm not out there trying to convince anybody that they're right or wrong. I'm not out there trying to think that anybody should be. I had basically pulled back from saying anything in the world before I ran into that psychic. Just like when Marshall ran into me in law school in 1966, he wanted me to write articles. Marshall wanted to change the world. Marshall thought we got to do something about it. And you know what my thought was? Fuck this shit. I'm done with it. All right. I don't want to get buried. I know what I'm up against. I know that was in 66. Okay. Now, 50 years later, I'm a lot more hopeful. But I do not believe that people knowing what I want or seeing my point of view is going to change the world. I know the world is going to be changed. And I know it's going to be enough for people just to try and hang on during these changes. But why I wrote Document the Mother, why I wrote Letter to House Select Community Intelligence is I thought, shit, this is what everybody's really afraid of it and I won't look at. So I just wrote that because I had to. I've been carrying it around ever since Norman told me that in the mid-1980s. I had to write it. But Document the Mothership, I think the people who are going to find it are the ones who are supposed to. And I know, David, that when they read it, it's going to be beyond what they can believe. I know it's going to be over their gradient, as Marshall says. But I know that if you do read it and hold that part of you open to that possibility, it will help you get through the next 2 to 3 years. And then you're not going to need it because you'll have made it. But I think that's the purpose of Document the Mothership, is to give some those out there who it's beyond their grade, who haven't had. I know that the faith I've had has been honed over the experiences that I've had. All right. I know that this wasn't the faith. I started it with just fear. I started this path with, holy shit, we're screwed. All right. And now you got one guy who's sitting here who's got a whole lot of belief that, hey, no, we're all right. We're all right, but we don't know it. And when we're through this thing, we're going to know it's all right. But it's going to take this to get us to know that. On our own, we don't have a chance in hell. But we're not on our own. That's my real belief, that we're not on our own. And it ain't like other people say it is, because they've had a vested interest, or they're in the box that they're in. They don't know any better. You know what? I don't listen to them. I know what they say. I know what they think. I don't listen to them. I know that I've been led. And I know that each one of us is being led, how little we have aware of it or not. And it's going to force us to finally be at one with that thing. It's not the horrible thing that I thought it was. I mean, like I said, my greatest thankfulness of gratitude is that I've been wrong. Because if I'd been right, David, if I'd been right, Dan, we'd all be fucked. All right. I mean, I had this down. I had it tapped down when I was in school. I knew what the odds were. I knew who was out there. I knew who ran it.
So,
But now,
so
hey.
the universal invisible hand, if you will, in a way.
Yes, great. That is great. That was great, Dad. Adam Smith's invisible hand is holding us, is cupping us. Yes, yes, yes. It is invisible, which means it can't be seen. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
You beat me to it. I was going to say, I do believe that there are things of this whatever world or universe, to your point, that it may not be by the five senses or sixth or whatever.
At all.
But it does, just because we can't comprehend or envision it doesn't mean it's not there in some way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah, I've always said that the fact is that we are our thing of life is constrained by our beliefs, and it doesn't mean that what is not. It doesn't mean that it's true. It just means we're constrained by it. We're prisoners of our own belief, and all of us think we're right. I mean, I remember one of my friends in the Haight-Ashbury became born-again Christian. I mean, we all know where that goes, all right? And he came to see me a few years after that, and I wrote him a letter. I said, you know what? I said, I can't believe how many different points of view I've had these last 10 years. And whatever point of view was, I thought I was right. And it's a good thing to know after all these years that my being right isn't dependent on something as transitory as my point of view. Like, hey, buddy, we all think we're right. We all think we're right. And I know, and before, I never would have been grateful for the path that I found myself on. It was just too intense. It was too damn intense. All right. It was like, but now I'm grateful for it. I am grateful for it because I can sit here and see with the equanimity that I otherwise was not natural to me. Let me guarantee you this. The equanimity that I'm sitting here with was not natural to me.
Well, let me ask you a question then.
Yeah.
You said when you were a hippie, money didn't mean anything to you. Then you studied money. Now, if I have to be honest with you, I don't want to say it's my self-worth, but in our society, I think money plays such a huge role in how people feel about themselves.
And security, everything.
So did that change for you as you learned about money? How is it? I mean, do you not view yourself as far as your success in writing books?
Listen, I would love, one of the things that happened by me, in my novel I wrote, I said, I've had, I know what excess is. All right. I know what too much is. All right. I mean, I've stayed in suites in Paris. Okay. I've eaten. I mean, I've had that. I've dined. And I'm not going to put it down. But it ain't the end all to be all. That stuff that we strive for, thinking that's what we want, it isn't what we want. But it isn't what we don't want. It isn't that. We've given it a primacy that it doesn't deserve. Those joys are meant to be gifts along the way, like a beautiful sunset. No more, no less. No more, no less. This is how hippied out I had gotten when my restaurant went down. I had a restaurant, Berkeley, Natural Foods, okay? And And we were cheap. We had prices. We had brown rice instead of white rice. We had honey instead of sugar. Everything was, natural, and we were going broke because our prices were so cheap. All right. But we didn't know it then. All right. But we were hippies. Right. And then we had this great argument in our restaurant whether to keep serving meat. All right. Whether to keep serving meat. Because I had read Autobiography of Yogi, hippies during that time, vegetarianism, it didn't start, recently. It was always there. So we're thinking whether we should have cut meat out of the menu. And Zenny, who I had met in the Haight-Ashbury, she worked in my at the concession of the Avalon Ballroom. She eventually became executive chef to Tim McGraw and Faith Hill.
Oh, wow.
All right. And here we are, 1971. And Zenny says, well, we can cut out chicken and we can cut out beef and pork, but we can't cut out chicken and seafood. Because if we do, we're going to go broke. And you know what I said? Well, if money is the only reason we're serving it, that's the lowest reason of all. We cut it out and we went broke a year later. All right. And I always used to think, well, I stood up, about being right about money and stuff like that. And a friend of mine told me in the business years later, he said, you know how I knew I could trust you, Darryl? I said, what? Because he handed me the keys of the kingdom, his kingdom. I said, no. He said, I heard that story about your restaurant. And how, like if I did something that I knew would be economically not feasible. All right. Well, Zenny died just a couple of years ago. Extraordinary person, extraordinary life. And it occurred to me that maybe the reason I said that to her wasn't so much that I was playing the high hand, is that we always had a brother-sister relationship, and I just did it to be obstinate. That if she was right, I was going to let her be right. All right. And so we went broke. Well, losing the restaurant was one of the best things that happened to me because it was like a millstone around my neck. All right. I mean, I was 24/7. I was locked into that. And after it went broke, then I had another part of my life and the high life started. All right. The high life. And how do you know which way it is when you're up there? You don't. Why do you make the choices you make? You don't know. And it's only in retrospect. But at 77, I have a lot more retrospect now than I had then. All right. And I knew the pressure I felt then as my kids were growing up, as all this stuff like this. Okay. And having been given the gifts that I've been given, the friends, just the stuff, who would have thought that I'd be opining about money? Who would have thought that I'd be the one to write down the Norman Therian story about, this $500 million scheme of the CIA? But they were given to me to do. And I'm glad of it. I've been really close to that edge for too long. I remember what Tom Robbins said about the difference between an adventure. My life has been an adventure. All right. And Tom Robbins, but I never saw myself as being adventurous. I used to say that being a drug dealer was like being an accountant trapped in the body of a pirate. And Tom Robbins said the difference between an adventure and a suicide is the adventurer always leaves himself a margin of safety. The narrower the margin, the greater the adventure. And who would have known that my life would have been so, quote, adventurous or colorful? I mean, I know if my parents had their way, it would have been far less so. And if I had my way, it would have been far less so. But it wasn't meant to be. That astrology chart that Bob the Candlemaker read for me in 1967 was a lot more true than I ever could have seen. And I used to be afraid of what we consider fate, because fate to me always seemed to be something you had no control over. Mm-hmm. Well, thank God we don't have control over who we are. Mm-hmm. If we could have traded in our divine heritage, we would have done so along the way. And we've tried to, all of us have. Fuck this shit. I'm going for it. But we can't give it away. It's who we are. And we're only here to learn the lessons temporarily on this planet that we're supposed to.
Hmm.
It's a good thing it's temporary, because who we are as eternal beings is far greater. You know what? I remember Regina, when she, at the end of our conversation, she's the one who interviewed me on Gaia. And here it was, 2021, and the topic was Time of the Vulture, a book I had written 15 years before where I was talking about the economic collapse. And I was explaining to her the trouble we're in, and she looked at me, she said, Darryl, what would you have me tell our viewers? What would you have me say to them, given what you just said? And I paused. And these words came to me that came to me when I was in prison. And these are the words. We are eternal lights passing through temporal darkness. We cannot be harmed. We are love itself. That's something we don't know now. But we will. For reasons beyond our ability to know or understand. But we can't get out of it. It's our path. And what I know now at 77, I certainly didn't know at 17, or at 27, or 37, or at 47. But I learned a little bit more as I kept going on. And that's what it is. I feel good about life in a way, and I feel better about it than I ever did before. And as David said, it has a lot to do with what I've gone through. But that's what I'm saying. I think that if you read Document of the Mothership, it's going to be on most people's ability to accept as being true. And I do not accept anybody's ability to believe what is beyond their, because you can't believe what is not true for you. But I'm putting it out there as my truth in a way that I think will be helpful in the coming few years.
Yeah, we're down to 5 minutes, but I just wanted to interject. We're going through a paradigm shift right now, Darryl. And when people start, like the American dream and any other.
It's free.
So,
yeah.
And so as people start to stop believing that what used to be is true, we already are starting to see chaos because people don't know what to do now.
People don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, all I know is this, and I know it from the bottom of my heart. This crisis, this introduction to chaos was set in motion by the universe to bring us to our real selves.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the purpose is.
Yeah.
And if it takes us to our knees, so be it. There's certain things you learn on your knees that you don't learn anywhere else.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, like you said on our first interview, nobody willingly gets off the couch.
No one willingly gets off the couch. I used to think that my father may have been right about me, that unless he made me do things, I wouldn't have done it. So even in retrospect, I know that my father's point of view of me wasn't all wrong.
How did your parents name you, by the way? Darryl, Robert?
Schoon. How about the name Schoon?
Schoon.
A German name. Yeah. But let me give you my Chinese name. My Chinese name was Ji Ying Sai. And that means man of many talents.
Wow. Awesome.
There's some stuff back there, I guess.
Yeah.
That we don't understand.
Wow.
That we don't understand. And the name Schoon, Schoon, is a Dutch name, and it means pure.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And how that name got caught into it. I mean, I remember when I started writing, I got a letter from some people, their last name was Schoon, and they wanted to, say, this is great, we may be related. I said, I really don't think so. All right.
You got Caucasianized.
Yeah, but we may be. And I said, I know the name Schoon. I said, I just hope I haven't done disservice to it. And they assured me, no, you've done quite well to our name, because they read my economic writings, but they had no idea I'd been in jail all those times either.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't want to ask a question that will take us down a rabbit hole because we have 4 minutes.
All right.
But
if you must.
But
yeah.
if you must, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. If you must.
Well, it's I always ask you this every time, but it's I'm not even I tell people to get right with their faith, make sure they're right with God, because
Yeah.
call it what you will, because whatever happens, we know that we're all going to die. And when we get to the end of the path, we want to be ready.
Later.
Well, you want to be ready at every moment. And I think being ready just means, in its truest sense, now or at the moment where we're at the pearly gates, is to be open. That's the difference. I think we came into this world and we were clenched up. We plexed up, all of us. We got belief systems, we started thinking, and we got plexed up and more plexed up and more plexed up. I think the crisis is going to open us up in a way that we couldn't do on our own. And when we finally are open, we're going to say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow, what a ride. Thank you. I'm glad it happened. But that's then, not now.
No, and
So,
8 out of 10 people might not be around. Yeah.
Well, we don't know, but in their souls they will be. It just wasn't their druthers this time.
Right.
It just wasn't their deal this time. When they scoop off the top, some of the people stuff, it's this is a universal thing. It's a lot bigger than we are. And thank God we are not who we think we are.
Right.
And yet we have to live with who we think we are in the interim. It's a paradox, as they say.
Well, Darryl, I'm going to leave links to your books now, because the newest book is the one that you're referencing, Docking to the Mothership.
At the mothership, yeah.
And that's obviously has a lot more of your latest thoughts in it than Time of the Vulture. Because would you say Time of the Vulture still applies to what's going on now as well, or any of the other books?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Time of the Vulture withstands the test of time. What I wrote about in 2007 about the economic crisis explains what is going on today. The first page, I talked about the rising interest rates and what it was about to do.
Yeah.
And that's where they're going to go. So everything I said in there, even the thought about the new world, even that is in there. Buy them all.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you have quite a few books up there. Absolutely.
So crass.
Quite a few, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of work, a lot of good work there.
Yeah, they are a lot, because I was writing my book at the same time you were writing The Mothership. And at least we both were able to complete them.
Get them done. Yep. Get it out the door and see what happens.
Amazing.
Well, it was a great discussion. I thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for all the thoughts and stories. Got a lot out of it, Darryl, for sure. Yeah, no, that's my 2 cents. I mean, I can't even. You packed so much in there. You packed 20 pounds in a 5-pound bag.
All right. Hey, just keep, just make sure it doesn't go out the bottom.
a lot of tidbits.
So
we'll do it.
Who knows when this thing's going to fall apart? We'll see.
Who knows? And until then,
peace. Thank you.
Peace out. Thank you, Darryl, so much.
All the best,
man.
Thank you.
All the best.
You too.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye now.